Big breaking news out of the NBA. James Harden plans to opt in, not out, opt in to his $35.6 million player option for next season. That is per multiple reports. The Sixers then plan to work with Harden to find a trade partner for the 10-time All-Star. Both the Clippers and the Knicks expected to be in play for Harden. That is per multiple reports. And once the trade is complete, it will end a 1.5 season stint there in Philadelphia for James Harden. Let's welcome in NBA insider and writer Bill Ryder on the phone with us about this breaking news regarding James Harden. Bill, I think a lot of people thought James Harden would end up staying in Philly. Turns out that is not going to be the case. Your initial reaction to all of this?
Utter surprise, and there's nothing like NBA free agency for a little excitement, Amanda. I talked to a general manager earlier today who thought James Harden was probably going to be in Philly, but he said, we all know if it's not Philadelphia, it's Houston. Turns out it's not true. It is a great big open world for Harden. And he could go, I think, one of several places, given the fact, as we're hearing, that he wants to opt into this deal and then have the ability to be traded almost certainly to a contender.
What do you think led to this decision instead of deciding to stay there in Philadelphia?
Well, I'll tell you this. Talking to folks in that Philly organization, there certainly wasn't universal agreement about whether they wanted James Harden back. And there was some speculation around the NBA that Harden might opt into that deal and stay, even though Philadelphia wasn't entirely convinced he was the right fit going forward with the new head coach they have in place and what they hope is a better future in terms of the success they've had or the lack of success in the postseason. I mean, $36 million at Harden's age is a lot of money. It's a lot of leverage. So I think this is one of those situations where he gets the best of both worlds. He gets that deal. He'll almost certainly find a way to turn this into an extension with whatever team he's traded to, but it also allows Philadelphia to get something in return for him because, remember, not that long ago, they gave up a lot to bring him from Brooklyn, and this sounds like a way for a happy ending for everybody. Daryl Morey, who runs basketball operations for Philadelphia, and James Harden are very close. They're basically friends, as much as a GM and a player can be. So to me, this sounds like a win-win for everybody.
Okay, look, 10-time All-Star, and you talked about it there, the potential return for James Harden. I mean, what could Philly be looking at in return for James Harden?
Yeah, well, I mean, the short answer is anything, right? Because there was the very real concern. It was almost a catch-22. They were worried he would leave for Houston and get nothing in return. There were also people who were worried within the organization, not Daryl Morey, that their boss, Daryl Morey, would give Harden an extension and tie them to a player who's just not been as effective going forward. So there are reports out there that the Clippers and the Knicks are interested. I can confirm the report with the Clippers. I have not confirmed the report with the Knicks, but it makes sense. There are players you can bring in that are young on lesser salaries, 2 or 3 guys, and you can add the kind of depth that a lot of people in Philadelphia think you need to surround Joel Embiid with. And again, this is not a criticism of James Harden. He is a star player. He's been an MVP. He can be impactful, but he's never fit with Joel Embiid. It just hasn't worked on the court. As I understand it, hasn't been a perfect fit off the court. So the chance to reset and bring in several role players, maybe a borderline all-star in exchange for Harden is probably what Philly's looking to do.
All right, Bill, we got the Knicks that have been thrown out there. The Clippers have been thrown out there. As you mentioned, this is the NBA free agency. We know and love. It is already getting wild. Where could you potentially see Harden landing?
I think New York City makes a lot of sense. That's an ambitious organization. That is a front office that believes that James Harden can have an impact. And the Clippers, too. And I know that's already been reported. I mean, the thing about the Clippers are, and this is, they'll have to move on from Marcus Morris in order to make the numbers work and probably other pieces. They have bet, that front office, a lot of their own political capital on the idea. They've convinced Steve Ballmer that they could be a championship contender. And they haven't done that. Paul George hasn't stayed healthy, we know. Kawhi Leonard has not stayed healthy, we know. And so when you're desperate, a name like James Harden is probably enough to convince your boss that you know what you're doing and take a stab for it. So I think it's those kinds of teams that have big expectations for this upcoming season in a smaller window, because Harden's not going to be an impact player 2, 3, 4 years from now. Those are the kind of teams that would make sense. And I'm told to keep an eye, unlikely though it would be, maybe on an organization like Atlanta that thinks they can make a push with a new front office if they could find the right deal.
No matter where he lands, it appears James Harden has played his last game in a 76ers uniform. Bill Ryder, we appreciate it. There are a lot of NBA news is about to come down the pipeline as free agency, as you take a look at the upcoming dates, gets underway tomorrow. Today, that deadline for teams and those player options as well. James Harden again deciding to opt into his, likely looking at a trade out of Philadelphia. And then tomorrow, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, free agency gets underway. Breaking news out of the NBA, James Harden planning to not opt out, but opt in to his $35.6 million player option for next season. That is per multiple reports. The Philadelphia 76ers plan to work with Harden to find a trade partner for the 10-time All-Star. Both the Clippers and Knicks have been teams that have been thrown out there. We talked to Bill Ryder, who said maybe a team like Atlanta that thinks that they can make a push with another playmaker. Once the trade is completed, it will end a 1.5-season stint in Philadelphia for Harden. Let's welcome in former NBA champ, coach of the year, Avery Johnson here. Avery, we're talking to Bill, and he said, look, I'm a little surprised. I really thought that James Harden would end up staying in Philly. Maybe Philly didn't necessarily want him there, though. You, on the other hand, not necessarily so surprised to see this unfold with Harden. Why is that?
No, it's because, James Harden hasn't really delivered at the most important times of the season. And I know that rubbed Joel Embiid the wrong way. This could have gone either way, so there's Bill's partly right, and I believe I'm halfway right. But when you're talking about a new coach coming in with Nick Nurse, who's trying to build a culture that starts with defense first, James Harden probably wasn't going to fit into that type of culture. Tyrese Maxey is a guy that's taking that next step forward. But this gives Philadelphia an opportunity to not lose James Harden in free agency without getting any compensation back. Now they can go and potentially get one or two really solid players that can fit into that same salary slot, continue to build their team, or they can go and get them another max type of a player via sign and trade. So this gives them more flexibility. James Harden and obviously Joel Embiid wasn't the perfect fit. So I'm not necessarily surprised about James Harden opting in to this contract for 1 year and finding a new home outside of Philadelphia.
You see those most 40-point games in a single postseason there with James Harden just this past season with 2. I'm curious, before we get to what this means for the Sixers, though, when it comes to James Harden, so you had the Clippers thrown out there, the Knicks potentially. Bill Ryder said, talking to some people, maybe a team like Atlanta. What type of team could you see James Harden with, and what makes him still so attractive to these teams?
Yeah, I agree with Bill on the Clippers and potentially Atlanta. There's no way I see James Harden landing with the Knicks. First of all, he's not a good fit for Jalen Brunson. Are they trading Jalen Brunson? I don't think so. This guy's the heart and soul of that New York's Knicks team. So I don't see that. I don't know how we got on the Knicks. But I agree with Bill. The Clippers could be a really good fit. He would be the third best player. James Harden at this stage of his career needs to be the third or fourth best player on the team, not the second best player. So yeah, on a team like the Clippers, that would be a fit. They're going into a new arena in 2 years. They're in win now mode. James Harden's probably got a 2-year window left of playing, solid basketball at a high level. You still can't rule out the Houston Rockets of him returning back to Houston. They have the money. Obviously, they have some younger, inexperienced assets. They probably would have to get a third team involved if he goes to Houston. But I see him fitting in with a team like the Clippers if they can pull this trade off.
So for the Sixers, Joel Embiid, you mentioned Joel Embiid, sometimes frustrated as to what he saw from James Harden, because sometimes watching James Harden is like a roller coaster from one night to the next. He'll be 34 years old, 10-time All-Star. What do the Philadelphia 76ers want in return?
Well, another guy that can create his own shot, especially at the end of a shot clock. And really, this is also about Tyrese Maxey. Who can they pair Maxey with in the backcourt? He's the future of that team. I believe he qualifies for an extension here, so he'll end up getting a long-time extension. And then Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP, they're in win now mode. You don't want Joel Embiid like some of these other stars, like a James Harden, after next year to request a trade. So they got to figure out how to make him happy. But they definitely got to get some more ball handling in the door, 3-point shooting. That's a necessity, and a really good role player to come off the bench to combine with DeAnthony Milton coming off the bench to give them a solid 7-8 man rotation.
It is very busy in the front offices right now for every team in the NBA, including the 76ers and wherever James Harden may end up. Avery Johnson, we appreciate it. So today is that deadline for those player options. Again, James Harden deciding to opt in. The 76ers now looking to trade him. First day of free agency. Expect more fireworks getting underway tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern.